everyone, and welcome to the Sidereal Insights Astro update for December 30th, 2019. And I don't know about y'all, but I am so ready for 2019 to be over. Welcome to today's broadcast. And I apologize for the delay in getting started. I thought I had made a mistake, an egregious mistake in an earlier broadcast, and I was having a minor panic attack that I had given you all wrong information. So I had to stop and take a deep breath and collect myself and double check everything and make sure that I had not, in fact, given you all incorrect information. Probably what I need to do is just double check some settings on my software, and then I won't have panic attacks anymore. Anyway, welcome to the broadcast, and thankfully, no major errors. I'm refreshing my browser just real quick while everyone joins me so that I can pull up the broadcast on my laptop and keep track of any questions or comments that might come through while we're live. But I want to apologize for the delay in getting started. I just wanted to double check and make sure that if I had given you wrong information, that I was prepared to correct it on air today, and thankfully I don't have to do that. But welcome to Sidereal Insights. So what we do every 2 weeks on the broadcast on Sidereal Insights Astro Update, we explore the astrology of the current planetary transits across the heavens from a Western sidereal perspective. And so specifically today, we're using the 𝘁𝗵𝗶𝘀 zodiac. And we will be talking about specific signs, and we will be talking about some specific degrees of signs in that zodiac. So if you want to have your sidereal natal chart handy, that may be advisable. If you don't know your sidereal placements, I'm going to drop a link in the comments here real quick so that you can go look up your sidereal sign placements online at our free online calculator at mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools. So this is the link, if I've done everything correctly. Sometimes I start the broadcast with my keyboard turned off and then I have no copy paste. Anyway, there you go. So you can look up your sign placements, just plug in your birth data and you'll get a copy of your 𝘁𝗵𝗶𝘀 sidereal natal chart. You can grab a screenshot of that if you need, or just jot down the information. But I'm Phaedra. Welcome to the broadcast. I use Western sidereal astrology in my practice to help you really reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why you came. So sidereal astrology is a little bit different from traditional tropical astrology, if that's what you're more familiar with. Welcome to the broadcast. It's a little bit different. You can explore both avenues and gain incredible insights regardless of what your preference is. Just be sure don't mix the two systems. Otherwise, you'll give yourself panic attacks like I had before the broadcast today, because my report here says that our eclipse is in Cancer, which it's not, in January 10th, only if you're using the tropical zodiac. And yeah, for some reason it gives me the eclipses, same report, gives me the eclipses in the tropical and the full and new moons in the sidereal. And so from one line to the next on my report, it says it's in a different sign. And so I know that that's an issue. This is an updated version of a software that I've been using for years, and I don't know if I need to go in and change the setting or if I need to email the developer and say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on here. But anyway, we were giving you the right information. The upcoming eclipse, January 10th, is going to be in Gemini, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that on today's broadcast. But I want to thank you for watching. I want to let you know that really the aim of the broadcast is to offer you guidance on how you can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect your life in a positive way. Basically, to be proactive rather than reactive. You can respond to your transits rather than just react to them while things are happening to you and around you. If you know that things are coming, you can be a little bit better prepared. And that helps you kind of navigate what is the natural flow of energy through, throughout time, just kind of in a little more ease and with a little bit less of a bumpy ride, let's say. But if you would, please like and share this broadcast. Feel free to tag a friend if you know someone who might be interested in what we're going to be talking about here today. And remember, you can also follow Mystick Physick Astrology on Facebook. And please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll give you a link to that. Today, we're talking about some really interesting things that are going on just as the year turns from 2019 into 2020. And some of these are really rather rare astrological occurrences, and to have them happening kind of all at once is really phenomenal to my way of seeing it. I think this is really kind of been a singular year and coming up a singular month in a lot of ways. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means here in the broadcast. But first thing we're going to talk about is welcome to Conjunctiontown. Hello, January 2020. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're at with the current eclipse season, which is already underway. We're kind of at the halfway mark-ish. And we're going to talk a little bit about the full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini coming up January 10th. We just had our new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius at Christmas. And I did do a broadcast about that actually too. And I'll give you links for both of those here in just one moment. You may want to check out both of those broadcasts for more information about that particular eclipse, the one that happened on December. Hi, Dylan. Good to see you with us. I hope things are well with you. I hope you're enjoying your year end and have nice plans for the coming new year. But first, what I want to do is kind of recap where we're at with current transits and retrogrades, and then we'll dive into these other topics. The eclipses, we'll dive into a little bit more on the upcoming full moon. So Uranus is retrograde right now in Aries. This is the last planet of all of them to still be retrograde for the year. Aries, of course, being the sign of exploration and forging new paths into unknown territory, right? Uranus is a planet that can have an effect of granting us insights and eureka moments. And while he's retrograde in the sign of the self, those insights may be shockingly personal in nature. And when you would tend to see those types of things come up is when Uranus is in that retrograde state, is maybe making an aspect to one of your personal planets or on the dates of his station. Those can bring up significant events when a planet is stationary. So those are the kinds of dates that you'd want to keep an eye on in accordance to how this transit affects your own personal chart. The reason I bring it up now is because Uranus is about to station direct. And what we'll have at that point is a window of time until late in February where we have all of the planets in direct motion at the same time. And this is a very powerful window that tends to happen once a year-ish, at least currently with the current transits and the current planetary alignments. It's happening in this window early in the year. And that's a really powerful time for making new initiations and new beginnings because you have the full support of the entire solar system at once. And so I want to call that out as being a window that's opening up here very shortly once Uranus stations retrograde. All the other planets have returned to direct motion already, which is fantastic. But those insights that Uranus retrograde can bring up can come up at those stationary points, and he's slowing down. We're going to feel the effect of his station for roughly a week from about the 7th to about the 13th or so, which is also the same week that contains our full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini. So these things are kind of playing out at the same time. But Uranus retrograde really presents an opportunity for inner exploration, right? About our own behavior, about we could have surprising realizations around extremes of selfishness versus selflessness. When this retrograde is activating something in our chart, either by transit or by station. What's cool about that is that this very powerful, intense Uranus stationary energy is happening in Aries right at the beginning of the new year, which is our traditional time for turning over a new leaf, right? So this is a wonderful opportunity to leverage Uranus's behavior to reinvent yourself as the new year opens. And so specifically what you want to look for there is, where's Aries in your natal chart? This is your opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself in that area of your chart, that house. So watch January 10th. This is going to be an important date. We're going to talk about it a little bit more detail in a few moments here. But we're going to have all planets in direct motion once Uranus stations direct on the 10th until February 17th. And that's when Mercury is going to station for his first retrograde in 2020. So make a note of that date. Mercury will enter the shadow period of that retrograde on February 2nd. We'll talk more about that in a future broadcast, but I want to call out this window of time that you have with all of the planets in direct motion from January 10th until February 17th. Okay, so you want to maximize that window of time as much as you can before it's over, because you'll have the full support of all the planets in the solar system behind anything that you initiate during that window. Okay. Eclipses. So this is it. January eclipse season is here, right? We're smack in between our two major eclipses of this season. The new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius that we just had on Christmas. And then our full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini coming up here on January 10th, the same day, like I was saying, that Uranus stations direct. So this is the fourth set to kind of like position you in this series of eclipses. This is a 24-month long series, and this is the fourth set of eclipses of 5, basically, in that series. So the series itself is going to culminate this, I want to say this summer, but it would be this winter for those of you who are watching from Australia. It's going to culminate in July of 2020. That'll be the end. So right now I feel like we're kind of at this crescendo point of this eclipse series, because each set of eclipses in the series brings you to a new stage in whatever change the eclipse is triggering for you, right? And so here we're smack in the middle of whatever that next stage of change is. And it's happening at this really unusual point astrologically, where we have just like a ton of conjunctions coming up all at once. Okay. Plus we have this stellium going on in Sagittarius, which is the eclipse sign for the new moon eclipse, and then the opposite sign for the full moon eclipse, which sometimes can be activated, right? The opposite sign sometimes can be activated. And so this plays very heavily into the astrological energies that we're experiencing right now, especially as we move into January. And I don't know about you, but it kind of feels a little electric right now. I think partly that's Uranus stationing. I think partly that's the eclipse energy kind of hitting this high point right when we have all of these conjunctions ready to play out during the month of January. We just had our new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius at Christmas time, like I was saying, and you may want to catch a couple of broadcasts here. So I'm going to drop some links real quick into the comments. These are for some just past broadcasts in case you missed them. So the last Sidereal Insights Astro update that we did on the 16th of December, I did kind of a special broadcast where we talked about this particular eclipse season, because I had not yet done my eclipse video for you, and I apologize for that. So you will want to catch that video, and that's the one that I had a major freak out that I thought I had messed up on, because my sheet here says it's in Cancer and in Gemini, and I looked at the wrong line and freaked myself out. That's why we started late. So I apologize for that. But you'll want to catch that broadcast, because I go into more detail about which specific degrees of which specific signs you want to check in your sidereal natal chart, and I went into depth about which dates these eclipses are active, because they have an effect of up to 2 months before and after the actual date of the eclipse. And that happens kind of on a 30-day cycle. And so I called out which dates you want to keep an eye on if you're going to be directly affected by either of these eclipses, and walk you through how to know if you are directly affected. So be sure to catch that broadcast if you haven't already. For the eclipse coming up in January on the 10th, this is at 25 degrees of Gemini. So for those of you who have your charts handy, you'd want to look for a planet or point at 25 degrees of Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, or any of the fire signs, Sagittarius, Aries, or Leo. And watch the week before and after January 10th for eclipse-related news to arrive. For most of us who are going to be affected, that week before and after the eclipse event itself is usually the big point where the news, whatever it is, whatever kind of change or information the eclipse is going to deliver for us, that's usually the window where it will arrive for the bulk of us. Now, if you need a little bit of a refresher on how eclipses work and how to navigate them, you may also want to catch my Eclipse Essentials broadcast that I did a while back. This just kind of takes you through eclipses themselves, how they function, how they unfold, what we need to know to get through them with a minimum of headache and heartache. So catch that broadcast if you haven't, or if you just need a refresher. So right now we have the sun in Sidereal Sagittarius, right? We have a freaking dance party going on in Sagittarius right now. It was even worse a couple days ago when we had our new moon, because the moon was there too. We had 6 planets in Sagittarius at that point. Right now we have 5. So everyone's in Sagittarius, like I said, it's a dance party there. We have Mars right now. He's like the straggler hanging out in Scorpio. Hasn't quite caught up to the party. We'll see if he does, right? And he's going to be in Scorpio from December 26th. He just made his move into there until February 7th. So until right before our next Mercury retrograde. So keep that in mind. What I want to really kind of spend some time talking about are all of these conjunctions coming up in January. So in astrology, let's give you a little bit, maybe of a lesson here for those of you who aren't quite so familiar with the aspects and how these things can influence us. In astrology, the strongest of all aspects is considered to be the conjunction, right? So that's when two planets line up, they're combining forces, and it emphasizes the significance of the sign, the house, the degree that that conjunction is taking place in. So this can manifest, it's like an amplification of energies. This can manifest as resonance, or it can manifest as dissonance. So these energies can be complementary to each other and harmonize, or they can be more in contrast with each other. And so then we have maybe a bit of disharmony in the experience, right? And at their essence, so that the conjunction itself can play out for better or for worse. It really just kind of depends. It also depends on whether or not that particular planetary conjunction is touching off something in your own personal chart, and is it doing that by square? Is it doing that by trine? So there's other things that we need to look at when we're taking a look at how these transits can affect us personally. But the conjunction, as I was saying, is considered the strongest aspect that two planets can make. And at their essence, conjunctions mark both the beginning and the end of a cycle. Okay, so they're a turning point. And in doing that, in acting as a turning point, they command our attention. They command recognition. They trigger significant events. When conjunctions involve the luminaries, especially when the luminaries are sharing the same degree of latitude, that's when they become eclipses, and then that becomes even more powerful, right? So that magnifies the influence and makes it even more intense. Well, what's interesting about this new year, as we usher in 2020, as we usher in January, this theme of endings and beginnings is really kind of playing out all around us. Eclipse season, like I was saying, is well underway. And of course, that's an important set of conjunctions and oppositions playing out, right? A powerful set of conjunctions and oppositions. January is bringing this series of very meaningful conjunctions as well, as those planets march their way through Sagittarius. And so what's happening is the faster overtake the slower moving planets as they progress, and that triggers our eclipse or our conjunction cycles. And so the turning of the year is becoming this cosmic kind of transition point. And it calls us to take note and to pay attention, because this is a big deal. It's really important. This transition point is one with the potential to mark our memory for years to come. And that can be due to events that take place in our personal lives, or can it be due to events that take place on the broader world stage, okay? So that's what's so significant and so important about what's happening right now. To start off all of this conjunction activity, January 2nd, right at the beginning of the month, we have Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius at 12 degrees. And so that kind of begins some of this January conjunction activity. So this stimulation of transaction activity, of transportation activity, a stimulation of the flow of communication, this combination can kind of set the stage for the growth of networks, for increased communication activity, for good business growth, provided that the energy is used with intention. And what I mean that setting the stage for that increase in activity, that's an increase that would play out from this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction cycle to the next, right? So this may be a shorter time frame type of conjunction cycle than maybe like the Saturn-Pluto conjunction cycle that we'll be talking about as well. So keep that in mind. Some of these are shorter cycles as they play out, and maybe a little bit less intense because of that. And some of them are much bigger, more dominating cycles. And because of that, they can be much more profound when they happen. and they can affect us much more deeply and have much more long-lasting effects in that sense. But you want to be able to use all of this conjunction energy with intention. You need to tap into it and activate it. But Mercury, Jupiter, like I was saying, this has to do with commerce and transportation and communication, and increases, surges in activity. If you're wanting to set the stage for growth around one of those Mercury related themes, whether that's knowledge, information, intakes of data, that sort of thing, this is the time to be starting in early January. Have a plan for what you want that growth to look like, and then you can get it set in motion. You'll know what types of actions to be taking as that cycle plays out through the series of sextile squares, trines, oppositions, and then the closing trines, squares, and sextiles. Okay. So as with all conjunction cycles, you definitely want to take the appropriate action at those subsequent aspects. Okay. So when you do that, when you take the right action at the right time, especially when you take the right action at the sextiles that follow our conjunction and at the trines that follow our conjunction, that can have kind of an ameliorative effect, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly, on the crisis points that are triggered after. So if you take the right action at the sextile, the square is less difficult and can potentially offer greater growth. Same thing when the trine happens. You have to consciously take action at sextiles and trines. And if you don't, the squares and the oppositions and sometimes the conjunctions tend to be a little more difficult. So you can plan ahead. You can create kind of a general plan of action for yourself for these conjunction cycles. Okay. So what you want to know about this particular one, 12 Sagittarius, folks who have a planet or personal point at 12 Sagittarius are going to find this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction to be personal. So you'd want to definitely take note of events around that date, January 2nd. Kind of looking ahead a little bit further, we already talked, of course, about Uranus's station. Just before the new moon, we're going to have Venus entering Aquarius. So that happens January 9th, right? The day before our Uranus station and our next eclipse. So as we approach that full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini, which is the second one of the season, Venus and Uranus are going to kind of move into place to flavor that. And the first thing that'll happen is Venus will make that shift into Aquarius. And what will happen is it's going to kind of flavor our new moon with a touch of the unexpected, because Uranus is going to be in position as well. Venus being in Aquarius, that's a fellow air sign to Gemini, right? So this is going to definitely have an impact. And then with Uranus being in our fire sign, which is our other set of signs that are most strongly affected by this eclipse, it's going to have that effect of maybe bringing in, like I said, a bit of the unexpected. Which could play out in a good or a bad way, just depending on how this eclipse affects you. The Sun conjunct Mercury, we also are going to have that coming up right as we have our full moon, the eclipse, of course. So we have this kind of added planetary oomph going on. So January 10th, the next day, we have Uranus, surprises and sudden events. And the ruler of Aquarius, which is where Venus just moved into, right? Stationing direct at 7 degrees, 38 minutes of Aries. And I apologize to those of you, not that I'm responsible for this, but I apologize for those of you who that might be directly opposite another planet or point, because that can be a little uncomfortable, as I'm experiencing right now. So Uranus can bring accidents, right? He brings surprises. He can bring sudden reversals of fortune and sudden changes of heart, right? Happening at an eclipse, eclipses tend to bring permanent change, right? So this could be kind of a permanent change of heart, right? Or a permanent reversal of fortune, or certainly something that could have a long-term duration to it, right? Something where there's really no going back from. So just be aware, if this eclipse affects you personally, that is potentially something that could play out in the week before and after January 10th, okay? So take note, especially if you have a planet or personal point near 7 or 8 degrees of Aquarius, or if you have Gemini, Virgo, or Aries sun sign, or Gemini, Virgo, or Aries rising sign. You could also be affected even if you don't share a planet or point with the exact degree of the eclipse. So something quite out of the blue could potentially benefit you in an unexpected way. Okay. So the lunar eclipse in Gemini happens the exact same day, and that places the emphasis on truth coming out, right? It's in Gemini. The sun is conjunct Mercury in Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, excuse me. So this is the planet of truth. This is the sign of it's a sign of higher knowledge, the higher mind. So this is about personal truths potentially, or philosophical truths potentially. But keep in mind, Mercury is in fall in Sagittarius, right? So we have to be kind of careful with this lunar eclipse because it is so emphasizing the truth coming out. And this is a truth that has the potential to change everything, right? This eclipse, being a full moon, could really shine a light on our words and remind us that those things have consequences. Words have consequences. So it doesn't matter if those words come from impulsively speaking your mind, or if they're deceptive, or if they're dishonest, or if they're meant to confuse or obscure our access to information and knowledge. All those types of dynamics, words have consequences, right? And they can't be taken back once they've been said. So keep that in mind. Be very, very careful with what and how you speak in the coming couple of weeks. And definitely, like I tell you in the Eclipse Essentials video, don't be giving any ultimatums to anyone right now. It's not the time for ultimatums. They tend to backfire at eclipse time. Dylan says, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction scares the shit out of me. You know, it's an interesting conjunction. We're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail. Maybe it might even be our very next conjunction that we're going to be talking about. That one plays out over a longer period of time, but because it does that, it can have a deeper, more longer felt impact. I wouldn't worry about it too much if it's not touching or aspecting something in your own personal chart. Probably in that case, what you'll see is you'll see it play out in the world around you at large without it really affecting you directly. However, if it does happen to aspect something in your natal chart, you're going to want to keep an eye on it. It's probable in that situation that you've already been feeling the effects of this probably for the last year, potentially even the last 18 months, and that you may continue to feel the effects of this eclipse for the next year, the year following its actual exact aspect. Just because they are such slow moving planets, they tend to stay in orb in terms of aspect orb for a longer period of time. But also that's just due to my own research on Saturn-Pluto conjunctions. I did some research on them a couple years ago and saw that they do have a tendency to have very long-term impacts. And where I was seeing the really kind of hot points are the 18 months before and after the exact aspect of. Danielle wants to know, is any of this hitting Neptune? And let me take a quick look, Danielle, because I don't know. I might have my chart handy because I was freaking out about giving you the wrong information. Is any of this hitting Neptune? Yes, it is actually. And I didn't get into that too awful much in some of the material that I already wrote, primarily because it's hitting by sextile and trine. And I feel like the conjunctions need a little bit more attention, and the eclipses and the stellium. I feel like those are more significant, but Neptune also has to do with the truth and deception, right? I know that as a sign, Gemini gets a ton of crap from sign bashers about dishonesty or lying. And I also happen to know that that just doesn't, I don't see that play out in observation. Dishonesty, lying, deception, those usually involve Mercury-Neptune squares, right? The hard aspects between those two planets, because Mercury is about communication. It's not about truth. It's about communication. Neptune is about deception and obfuscation and being misled and escapism and not wanting to face reality, right? And so when those two hit each other hard, that's really where you might more see that theme of deception play out. However, with Neptune being involved, yes, and with Mercury being in Sagittarius, yes, this is about truth, potentially. Neptune can also cover what has been hidden from our awareness, right? What we haven't quite gained perception of. So things that are happening in the periphery of our lives are in the unconscious, right? So where it does involve Neptune, the same themes really are going to apply in this case, okay? So like I was saying, it doesn't matter what is the impetus behind your words. It's important to remember over the next couple of weeks that words have consequences. So watch for what you need to know to be brought to your attention before you make any kind of decisions or before you commit to a particular course of action at this full moon. And be patient. You're going to want to be patient and be aware of the details. With Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury rules details, right? And with him in Sagittarius in fall, it's going to be super, super easy to lose sight of the details and to lose track of the details. And so you're going to want to take extra time. You're going to want to be patient and make sure you keep those details in mind and stay cognizant of them. Don't speak impatiently. Don't speak off the cuff, because those things could come back to haunt you, right? So here in this case, folks with a planet or personal point at 25 degrees of Gemini or any air or fire sign are going to feel this eclipse personally. Likely as well if you have Gemini sun or rising. Those of you who have a planet or personal point at 25 degrees of Pisces or Virgo also take note, because this eclipse could affect you as well, but it would likely be more challenging, and it may bring up themes of escapism, themes of perfectionism. This is a little bit more where Neptune plays in potentially, and with a willingness to change, you could see this particular eclipse offer a chance to seek a realistic balance, which supports a life of well-being. But like I said, that's when it's accompanied by a willingness to change, right? Danielle says, so don't be shocked if someone says the truth. Yes, basically, especially don't be shocked if someone says the truth. And don't be shocked if that truth is something that you should have known a long time ago, or that you should have been aware of and was either being hidden from you or kept from you in some way. And that could be deliberately, or that could be not deliberately, but really with these aspects that we're seeing right now, I almost kind of feel like deliberately is more likely. But just kind of pay attention, keep your eye on it, see how it plays out for you, would be my advice in that regard, because it may not be a deliberate attempt to mislead, confuse, or obfuscate, okay? But just keep an eye on the fact that that information, because it's coming at eclipse time, is information that you need, right, in order to move forward on the correct course. So this is why we tell you to take your time at eclipse time. You want to make sure that whatever that secret is that's going to be revealed, whatever that information that's going to be brought to light for you, you want to have it in hand before you act, before you commit to a course of action, before you make a decision, because it's important and significant. That's why the eclipse brings it out for you. All right, eclipse. So 2 days later on the 12th, and this is also tied up in our eclipse energy because it's just 2 days from exact when the eclipse happened. We have Mercury conjunct Saturn, Mercury conjunct Pluto, so not just conjunct the sun. And we have Saturn-Pluto conjunction, the big one, right? We call it the big one, 𝘄𝘁, isn't it? So this is a major, major day. This is a really significant set of days around the full moon coming up in January. So Mercury is busy making connections with these planets all month long, right? So first he taps Jupiter as the month opens. We talked about that. And then he hits the sun at the full moon. 2 days later, he's hitting Saturn and Pluto. Those three planets are really just kind of meeting up all at once in Sagittarius, and it forms this really powerful, really intense triple conjunction. Saturn and Pluto are slower moving planets. And so that makes this conjunction one between Saturn and Pluto. This conjunction is one that only happens once every 33 to 38 years or so, 35 years on average. So it's such a long-term transit that the effects are generally felt unfolding over a longer time frame, as much as 2 years. And it's those years just before and just after the conjunction. So with Saturn and Pluto, what we're talking about is something that shakes the very foundations of whatever house Sagittarius occupies in your natal chart, in your sidereal natal chart. So this is shaking the very foundations, and it could completely destroy whatever things looked like in your life leading up to that point. I know that was my particular experience of this conjunction, along with the eclipses in this sign that kind of allowed this conjunction to play out in the way that it did. So something that can offer an opportunity to rebuild from the ground up, and to rebuild correctly, to rebuild with a proper foundation, to rebuild with a stable framework underlying everything that you're about to rebuild on top of it. So it's an opportunity for a major, major do-over. But what's most exciting about that is that it's an opportunity to do it and get it right, basically. So keep that in mind. These can be uncomfortable conjunctions. They can bring uncomfortable life experiences over the short term, but keep your eye on the prize. The prize is really the long term. And even the more challenging aspects that we deal with in our lives always bring us an opportunity to do something differently going forward. And that's where your real power lies. Okay. So what you want to know here is that this particular lineup is one that can bring long-awaited change to power structures. It can bring political upheaval. Those are a few of the examples of the more general, broader influence that it can have on the world at large, or on society, on our cultures. Because Pluto is considered more generational in nature, the effect of that might be felt more broadly and in more generalized terms for most people. However, that being said, if you have a planet or personal point at 27 or 28 degrees of Sagittarius, you're probably going to notice the effects of this Pluto-Saturn conjunction personally in your life in some way. Is also going to be true for folks who have Gemini, Virgo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, or Aquarius sun or ascendant, right? That's a lot of sun signs. That's a lot of ascendant signs. That's almost the entire zodiac, right? So we should all feel it play out in our personal lives in some way. Some of us will feel it more intensely than others, okay? But also note that that conjunction can play out over a span of about 18 months before and after the exact aspect, like I was saying. So I would even potentially up to 2 years you might want to give it. And where this is happening with an eclipse and where it's happening with a Mercury conjunction at the same time, I would say keep an eye on the entire 2 years before and after, because significant events may that are related to this cycle may have already begun playing out that early, okay? But just know that your personal experience of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction may transpire on a totally different timetable, and it really is driven a lot by how does this touch your chart? In what way are you affected by it? But expect relevant events to be revolving around themes of change to power structures, change, structural change, foundational change, struggles for control, struggles for influence, complete structural transformation of a system or some other kind of construct in your life, right? Sun conjuncts Saturn, Pluto, and Mercury moves into Capricorn the day after that, so January 13th. And so all of this activity is happening in such a short span of days, and all of it has a wide enough area of impact that these events and what they bring us, it's really all going to blend together. And it's really kind of difficult, if not impossible, to kind of tease out and assign which belong to which, because it's like a tapestry, right? You can't really pull one thread out and look at it that closely and really understand what's happening. But the way that I've kind of approached taking a look at these aspects is I have kind of pulled the one string out. So as you take in this information, just understand that as it all weaves together, these conjunctions and the effects they have in your lives, if you're going to be personally affected by them, it may be really impossible to separate what those effects are from one conjunction to the next. It's probably all related to one kind of big thing that's been going on in your life for several months, possibly a year, maybe longer. Okay. So, but this set of conjunctions involving the sun that transpire January 13th. So the details, the agreements, those things that we were talking about, they come under close scrutiny on the 13th when that sun hits that conjunction. That transit, I think, could trigger changes in leadership or highlight where changes in leadership are called for. And the reasons may be made very, very clear with that particular conjunction. So take a look at what house Sagittarius occupies in your sidereal natal chart. And also keep in mind that the sun can represent the father or the male partner in your natal chart. So where this solar conjunction follows so hot on the heels of everything else, keep in mind that for some of you, this may involve a male figure in your life. The sun can also represent a boss or authority figure. So this could play out involving you personally, or this could play out involving a male figure in your life, an important or significant male figure in your life. Okay. So where those changes may become, where I guess maybe the necessity for those changes may become evident is especially over that time frame where we have the conjunction and the days immediately after it. Excuse me, the eclipse and the days immediately after it. So the sun is involved most strongly on the 13th, but like I was saying, that could play in sooner, it could play in later. It just depends on how you experience this. Mercury moves into Capricorn that same day as the solar conjunctions, right? And so for 2.5 weeks, we're going to see exactly what kind of consequences your words can have, because that's what Capricorn is about, right? It's about Capricorn is about the cumulative earned outcome of whatever your actions, your activities may be. So as Mercury moves into Capricorn, he'll be there just briefly before he starts to retrograde again. Okay. So for that 2.5 weeks, we're going to see what kind of consequences can come into play while Mercury's in Capricorn. And then shortly after that, the sun will enter Capricorn, right? So that happens at mid-month on January 15th. The sun will move into Capricorn for his annual 4.5-week stay there. That's a sign of ambition. It's a sign of determination. It's a sign of consequences. It's a sign of what comes after all your hard work and efforts or all your bad behavior, right? So you can use these first weeks of January, and I would encourage you to do this, to steadfastly pursue important goals, important agendas, things that are significant and major to you and in your life. Definitely, I would encourage you to do that. I would also encourage you to, a couple of things. I would encourage you to go back and watch the last Sidereal Insights Astro update, where I went over this particular eclipse cycle in a little bit more detail, so you know the dates and you know the degrees that you need to be aware of as we move the rest of the way through it. I would also encourage you to go back and watch the new moon in Sagittarius guided intention setting. In part 1 of that 3-part video series, I talked a little bit more in depth, specifically about that particular eclipse and the astrological energies around it, how we can experience them, how they could play out. So I'd encourage you, if you want to learn more, even if you don't want to do the intention setting practice, watch part 1 for sure of that 3-part video series, because that's going to give you more information about what we've just come through. If you do want to do the intention setting, I would encourage you to go ahead and do it, right? Because you still have the first 10 days after the new moon or the full moon to do your work. Of course, the closer you can do it to the new moon or the full moon, the better, because you have the power behind your intention setting or behind your releasing practice. It's not too late. Go back and do it. I would also encourage encourage you, because this is an eclipse and because eclipses are particularly powerful, go back and do it for your sun sign too. If you only did it for your rising sign, the first day we did the practice, redo that intention setting practice, but do it for your sun sign, for your solar house, because you're going to give it oomph, and being able to take advantage of that oomph with an effect that could last up to a year could be really helpful for you. And I would encourage you not to waste the opportunity. Okay. So a couple of announcements, please stay tuned. The 2020 Ultimate Astrological Planner is now available. If you don't have one yet, I would encourage you to order one. If you want it personalized, they take a couple of weeks for me to get put together and get in the mail to you, potentially. So order right away if you want to get a personalized one. If you're getting just the general transit calendar, you can order pretty much any time and it should ship out fairly quickly. But definitely get your Ultimate Astrological Planner for 2020. I made some changes and improvements. We've got a lot of new exciting things coming up in the next year with that particular planner, and I want to give a shout out to 𝘁𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗀 of Parashara's Light Vedic astrology software. He has made that possible. So we've made a few tweaks and changes. I've added a new color coding for the new and full moons so that it's easier to pick those out when you're looking at the month on 2 pages. With Michiel's efforts, it's now possible for you to order your planner as an upgrade. There's an increased cost to this, but you can upgrade your planner for your own personal current time zone. I've been making them in Eastern Standard Time. Beginning with the 2021 planner, they'll be being created in Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC, whatever you want to call it. So we'll move to a standardized time zone, and then you'll have the opportunity to have it upgraded for whatever time zone you live in, so that you don't have to do the mental math for those transits that are showing up on the days in your planner. Okay, you'll just know exactly when they're going to be exact if you want that upgrade. Now, I don't have that listed as an option yet anywhere where these are available online. So if you want that when you place your order, leave a note for me and I'll help you make arrangements for that. And then the other thing I want to throw out there is that also thanks to Michiel's efforts, we can make this available in 𝘁𝗺. So for those of you who might watch my broadcast because they happen to be sidereal, but you personally use, say, a 𝘁𝗺 𝘂𝗈, or maybe you typically practice Vedic astrology, but every once in a while want to catch a tropical approach, I'm using Fagan Bradley, which is about 53 minutes of arc different from 𝘁𝗺. And these planners are now available if you would like, using the 𝘁𝗺 𝘂𝗈. And so, like I was saying, same as with the time zone upgrade, that particular feature is not yet been coded into the website as an option. So if you want that, make sure that you message me when you place your order so that I can make it with the right 𝘂𝗈. And I want to thank you all for sticking around and for enjoying that planner so much. Your feedback has been amazing, and that's what's allowed me to create improvements in it from year to year. And I'm really excited that next year our new version is going to give you an option to have not only the transit to transit aspects, but also your transit to natal aspects combined into one planner, which I've never been able to do before. This is really, really exciting. And so I don't quite have all of that ironed out in terms of how it's going to look, but that's actually my project for this year because we'll be rolling that out in time for the 2021 planner. So stay tuned for more about that. I'm really excited. Be sure and catch the January overview and short reports. They're going up at the website. I should have them available on the 1st for you. I will post a link to when those are live. And if you want to be notified right away when they do go live, sign up for my mailing list because I email out, as soon as I publish them, I email out a link. You're welcome, Danielle. Absolutely. I'm happy to help. That's the whole point of the broadcast. Did I give you the link? So like I was saying, it's not too late to do your intention setting. Here's the link for that. And I'll include these in the video description when the video goes up on YouTube as well, so that you can get these links really easily. Here are the horoscopes, which you probably won't need that link for a couple of days, but you do need these other 2 links, which I feel like I should have shared way back when we talked about them. What all did I give you so far? Eclipse Essentials, And yes, okay, so I gave you the links for the eclipse video. That's the Sidereal Insights Astro update for December 16th. That's the broadcast to watch. If you want more on how to navigate eclipses in general, that is the three eclipse essentials you need to know, I think is what that's called. There's a link for that as well. And then I just hit you with the new moon in Sagittarius guided intention setting link. And then, yes, the sidereal monthly horoscopes, I think, is the last one that you're really going to need. And with that one, you'll be able to have more access to kind of what we've talked about today, laid out so that you can come back and revisit it throughout the month if you need to do that. Because these are a very significant series of conjunctions, and I only got us through mid-month, right? So we still have the second half of January to talk about in our next broadcast, so come back for that, please. And then let's see if there's anything else. I do need to give you this link here, and this is the link for the YouTube channel, and this is so that you never miss a broadcast. Feel free to subscribe. You might want to hit the notification bell icon, and that will let you be notified every time I upload a new video. And I encourage you to do that in part because I upload the videos and I don't necessarily always get the email with the link out to everybody. I usually do. Every once in a while, so much is going on that it's not sent out in a timely manner. So if you want to be able to watch the intention settings and the releasing practices as near to the lunation as possible, then definitely I would encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the notification bell icon so that you do get notified when those go up, because you'll hear about it first there. Okay. And then join me Thursday, January 9th. Mark this down in your calendars. Thursday, January 9th, we're having our full moon in Gemini guided releasing practice in the Sidereal Insights astrology community here on Facebook. So that's a private community. Well, it's a closed community. So you want to join it if you want to attend live. Otherwise, I'll post the replay at the website. Hi, Nike. It's good to see you, my fellow friend with the Greek name. Or is Nike's Greek, right? Greek goddess of victory. Anyway, so yes, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I got derailed. 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:30 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and 1:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. I think I finally have this down, folks. That north-south hemisphere thing just throws me. 1:30 a.m. It's daylight time if you're in Australia, not standard time right now, in the Sidereal Insights astrology community here on Facebook, like I was saying. So join the community if you're not yet part of the community, and then you can join us live for that releasing practice. And it's going to be a big one. It's a big deal. It's an eclipse, right? You can let go of some serious shizzle, let's say, at this full moon eclipse. So be sure to join me on the 9th at 7:30 p.m. We'll see you then. Thank you all for joining me. And if you're joining late, I would definitely catch the replay because we went over a lot of meat on this broadcast. Normally, these broadcasts are short, sweet, 15-20 minutes. This one's gone almost an hour. So this is a big one just because January is so significant. It's so pivotal. And you're going to want to kind of have as much of a handle on what unfolds in January, I think, as much as possible. Just because this could be so significant for so very many people. But thank you all for joining me, and we will see you again next time. Thanks again.